Hi everyone, my name is Elay Cohen and I'm the CEO and co-founder of SalesHood. Welcome to this executive briefing on the signals behind winning deals. Now we analyze $1 billion of pipeline. We've got some amazing insights to share with you. Just a brief word, SalesHood, we're an agentic AI revenue enablement platform. We're all about enablement that drives revenue. Now SalesHood's AI agents deliver the coaching and the guidance and the execution that revenue teams need to perform and win more deals. Now, we're really excited to walk you through these insights and show you what the new world of digital buyer engagement looks like. All right, let's go. We asked ourselves a question. The question that we asked ourselves is, what are the buyer engagement patterns that are actually signaling deal momentum? This was a question that we asked ourselves. We've been working with many of our customers who've been deploying digital sales rooms with their buyers in their markets, in their go-to-market. And, we're seeing a lot of B2B sales trends. And so this was a question we asked ourselves a few months ago. So what's really going on? So this is the question that we're going to ask you, that we're going to answer for you today. So hopefully today, you've walked away with some very actionable insights so you can begin to uncover what are the signals that are going to drive deal momentum inside of your businesses. And so, listen, modern B2B buying has changed. Like, we all feel it. And AI is just making this even harder and even more complex. We've got buyers are more informed. They're showing up to our websites. They've done our demos. They've listened to our customer videos. They've spoken to their peers. They've gone to G2. They're informed. They're showing up and they're ready to talk and they're ready to do business. And there are more stakeholders. And these stakeholders are sometimes hidden. The deal is more complex because we've got CIOs, CFOs, the C-suite is now hands-on in a lot of these decisions because they want to make sure it's aligned with their top business priorities. And this is making it much harder to build consensus, much harder to build consensus. Now, you layer that on top of kind of the sales motion, the sales process today. It's still predominantly an email. We've got spreadsheets that are being passed back and forth, mutual plans if you're lucky, you've got price sheets, and then you've got this invisible buying committees that very apparent to us in our data. And so this is what's going on today. Now, I was at the Gartner Chief Sales Officer Sales Leader Conference for the last 2 days. And it's no surprise. They were talking a lot about digital buyer engagement. They're talking about how agentifying the sales process is where we're going. But we can't forget the fundamentals of sales execution, which is what we're going to talk about today. But check this out. These are recent stats. 75% of B2B buyers prefer a digital self-service sales experience. So for the most part, which is super interesting, and at certain stages of the sales process, which is even more interesting. And it's true. There's 6 to 10 stakeholders are now currently involved in B2B buying decisions. So we've got our observations in the industry. We've got what Gartner is sharing with the industry. And now we've got our data set, which I am really excited to reveal this. It's the first time we're doing this, first time we're sharing this data. So we analyzed the buyer engagement patterns across our customer base. We've anonymized the data. Approximately 50,000 digital sales rooms across 150 companies. It's about $1 billion-ish in pipeline, maybe a little bit more. 275,000 buyer contacts, over 500,000 pieces of content shared, and the actual interaction events, the actual signals itself, millions. And this data set and digital sales rooms, I think we get asked this a lot. Is it for SMB? Is it for enterprise? Is it for mid-market? Absolutely enterprise. Absolutely enterprise. But you can see here, the data set does range. The sweet spot that we saw was approximately between 100 and 200K in deal size is really the sweet spot where companies are seeing a lot of value. And I'm gonna walk you through that today. But you've got like a wide range here. You got companies using digital sales rooms for $1,000 deals and for $7.8 million deals. And so the data set is range and is wide in range. All right, so first, let me just answer the question, what is a digital sales room, right? So SalesHood is an agentic AI revenue enablement platform. We're helping companies with learning management, content management, coaching, playbooks, and with digital sales rooms, right? Digital sales rooms kind of emerged during the pandemic era when we realized that buyers are at home, sellers are at home, so you need a way to build a trusted, consultative, value-based selling experience where you could share content and let people experience your content, answer their questions. And so digital sales rooms are powering modern buying. It's a system of engagement for B2B selling. And here's what's going on in a digital sales room. You're sharing content, you're answering questions around a customer's decision process, you're engaging multi-threaded buying committees, you're helping a buying committee align on next steps and ultimately a mutual action plan, which goes way beyond signing the deal. And then ultimately, what's really interesting here is the roll-up data. And so, as a CRO, as a CEO, as a CMO, as a frontline manager, as an executive in a go-to-market team, RevOps, as enablement practitioners, as a rep, what's really interesting is these signals, these engagement signals. And so, this is the power of a digital sales room: is you're going to share this personalized, highly relevant, highly curated experience with your prospect, with your champion. You're going to share some content, you're going to share some videos, you're going to share a mutual plan, you're going to share a whole bunch of content. I'm going to go through all this in a minute and tell you what content is good versus not good. And then your champion logs into the system, and then their engagement. What assets are they looking at? What content are they viewing? What content are they not viewing? Who are they inviting to the site? That all turns into signals, engagement data, and that engagement data now rolls up to a forecast. And a lot of our customers are using the engagement data to drive business decisions, go-to-market decisions, as well as forecast decisions. So that is at a high level what a digital sales room is. I know some of you are deep in it, so this data is going to be hugely actionable. Some of you are new to it, so this is going to be enlightening in that way as well. I'm going to start with just describing a couple companies that have leaned into digital sales rooms early. Smart Recruiters, recently acquired by SAP, one of our first customers, standard across the board. So we are the system of record for B2B sales in that organization. Every deal has a digital sales room. It's truly transformed their go-to-market, and they're seeing win rate improvement, average deal size improvement, faster sales cycles, and ultimately help them improve the productivity, and that helped to influence the SAP acquiring Smart Recruiters. Amazing. There's some great videos, great stories. So what I'm showing you here is there's a collection of companies that are seeing dramatic lifts. Dave Frechette, Chief Revenue Officer at Federato, again, standard 300% revenue growth. Like, these are real numbers. And they're real numbers because now we've got the data. We know the CRM data. We know what content is being shared. You can attribute the impact of digital sales room buyer engagement to revenue, to forecasting in real time, which is amazing. And then Kelly Pinkerton, also KPA, an amazing practitioner. We did another webinar. So we've got 3 webinars on here. They've talked, they've shared their stories. But I just wanted to highlight that when we looked at the data, and our data set is looking at what's working and what's not working. And so we can be really prescriptive with you right now around how to action these signals of winning deals. So let's start with kind of the macro level signal, just engagement data. So we looked across all the data, the $1 billion of pipeline, the 50,000 digital sales rooms. And there are digital sales rooms that have no engagement or low engagement, and then there are sites that have high engagement. The engagement is the amount of times a buyer logs in and does something in the site, whether it's view content, engage in the mutual plan, ask a question in the chat and with the AI. And so that engagement score is attributed to, you can tie the engagement score to CRM data, and then you can see, does engagement data contribute to pipeline? And the answer is yes. So what we saw was high-performing digital sales rooms averaged 16 repeat buyer visits during the buyer journey, during the sales process, right? So remember, buyers are showing up, they're filling out a demo request form, they've already done all their research, and now they are showing up and they've got questions. And those buyers that are ready to buy, that are engaging with companies that have the right experience set up for them, a digital sales room that is perfectly curated for them based on what they need, based on the questions they have. Those champions, those stakeholders, those decision makers are showing up, and they're showing up at least an average of 16 repeat times, right? And we looked at all the data, the 50,000 digital sales rooms, and we could see a lot of sites didn't have 16 repeat buyer visits. A lot didn't. So I think as you're starting to think about benchmarking your teams, and you want to start integrating a digital sales room score, a buyer engagement score, 16 becomes a magic number. That's the magic number. It's tied to pipeline progression, tied to close one. Single visit signals awareness. A lot of single visit sites, not as many repeat visits. That's intent. And now I'm going to go deeper, and we're going to talk about what kind of visits, who's visiting, what type of content are they looking at. And then, for me, the big takeaway, and Dave Frechette over at Federato kind of enlightened me with this, where he walked through his forecast call, his pipeline call, how he does it with his C-suite, with his executive team, and they open up and look at all their digital sales rooms. They look at the engagement data, and they're correlating, they're mapping the engagement data to the forecast, and it provides them, an indicator of deal momentum and deal health. And that was also something that we learned from smart recruiters as well. So that's the first one. So I just want to level set. Engagement equals pipeline health equals pipeline progression equals improvements in won loss. So number one. Now let's go a little deeper. Now let's talk about how much engagement and what kind of engagement. And so then we looked at the number of contacts. Does the number of contacts influence engagement? Well, you think yes. And so when a digital sales room is set up and you have one contact, you can see engagement's very low. Look what happens at 2 to 3 contacts. Look what happens at 4 to 6. It starts to go up, you're kind of in, but boom. When you have 7+ contacts, then you're at 45.8 buyer engagement views. Like, you're in the money there. You've got a decision team, you've got a buying committee that is now in your site. They are in your room. They're looking at your content, they're engaging with your content, and now you've got a lot of information about what they're looking at. But most importantly, they're demonstrating true intent. And the thing that I want to just kind of highlight here is there's two types of companies right now. There are companies that have leaned into digital selling with digital sales rooms, and they've got this data, and they're out professionalizing their competition. They're beating the competitors, like smart recruiters, like Federato, like KPA. And then there are companies that are not. So put yourself in the shoes of a buyer. Do you want to buy from a company that shows up organized with the digital sales room that's curated just for you? Absolutely. And this data shows it. And so this data also starts telling us that, hey, you know what? We probably need to start coaching our teams to start looking at expanding the contacts and the contact roles and the number of people that are on a deal. So I just wanted to share this with you, like a 7x higher engagement when you're able to pull in the broader team. Now let's go a little deeper. And so just wanted to show you here that most teams are single-threaded. No surprise, we knew this. Most teams are single-threaded. Most revenue teams are still under-engaged in the buying committee. You got a champion, the champion saying things like, yeah, we got this. You and me, we're going to make the deal happen. You can't believe them. If your champion on your deals is not pulling in the buying committee, and if the buying committee is not in the site, then your deal's at risk because they're getting their answers from somewhere else. And so this is how you can leverage and how you can coach your teams to really lean into multi-threading and to use the digital sales room as a mechanism, as a place, as a proof point, as a qualifier, right? So 69% of the 50,000 digital sales rooms have 3 or fewer contacts. Yeah, and so, we're going to start working a lot more with our customers to help up level that as well, right? 19% have 40, but only 12%. Now, there is a correlation between that 12% and closed one as well, and deal size. And so this is why I'm really impressing on all of you. Like, you should start thinking about ways to train your teams to really up level multi-threading in your sales process, in your onboarding, in your coaching. You should teach your teams to be really curious with the champion and challenge your champion. When we talk to our champions and our champions say, hey, yeah, we got this, we can do this, Well, actually, to buy a revenue enablement solution or to buy an agentic AI solution for sales execution, you're going to need to pull in marketing, product marketing, RevOps, CRO. I've just five people. Most likely the IT's coming in, most likely someone from finance. That's six, seven people. And I bet you each and every one of you in your industries have the same dynamic, right? And so you can't trust a champion to be the one transferring the information, answering all the questions. Also, I'd be asking this question in deal reviews. How multi-threaded are we? Salesforce has contact roles for a reason. I use them. And then I'd be inspecting the number of contacts added to DSRs. You can do that in SalesHood, which is pretty great. So multi-threading should be the standard should become a coaching standard, and it should be something that is incorporated into the sales process. Again, no surprise, but it's really cool when you see the data. I'm going to go a little deeper, right? We talked about engagement. We just talked about multi-threading and single threading versus multi-threading and how you can have 7x engagement, kind of buyer engagement with a multi-threaded deal. So let's go a little deeper. What's the ultimate in alignment? Mutual action plans. Mutual action plans is the ultimate in driving repeat buyer engagement. So what do we see? So SalesHood's digital sales room has a built-in mutual action plan, which I love. I've always been a big proponent of mutual action plans. Listen, for me personally, I'm all about, you want to be introducing a mutual action plan early. This goes back way, way, way to my early B2B selling days. It continues to be front and center. But for some reason, we continue to not lean into it enough. And we tend to not position it effectively. And so this data shows us that organizations that have a mutual action plan that is activated inside of a digital sales room that has milestones and next steps that is truly mapped to the evaluation criteria, the decision criteria, the decision process of a buyer will have, 2x more engagement and the deals get bigger, right? And so I'm encouraging everyone, train your teams on mutual action plans. And you got to do more than just train them. You got to teach them how to introduce it, right? Yeah, we spend so much time teaching people how to pitch the product and do the pitch slides and pitch stories. It's important and do the demo, but hey, how do you get your teams to be confident and competent and able to articulate the value of a mutual action plan at the right moment in the sales process, right? I think it's a qualifier. Your first meeting, second meeting, you know what? Why not introduce it there? What we're seeing is folks are waiting too long to introduce a mutual action plan. So if you introduce it early, you get true buy-in on the actions and the milestones, and you're really going to see this lift in engagement and then lift in the ASP. So that's mutual plan. So engagement, and then we talked about multi-threading, and then we talked about the ultimate in alignment, which is mutual action plans. And I've got some tips later how to operationalize all this, but let's go a little deeper. And so, I did want to just, I got this stat yesterday from Gartner, and I think it's super interesting. And what's really interesting about this is, you know, folks have been using email and digital sales rooms to literally drown our prospects in noise. And I think this it hit me. 76% of buyers will avoid sellers that send irrelevant messages. So to all my SDR, BDR folks here, personalization, relevance, hyper personalization is so critical. And it applies here inside of a highly curated digital sales room as well. And 58% avoid suppliers that send too many messages. We tend to shower our prospects with messages and emails and content. This is kind of what we see in the data as well. And Gartner has confirmed it versus being relevant and personalized, being curious and sending to them what they need and being aware that they're coming in really at stage 3, stage 4. They're not really showing, they maybe are stage 1, but they're ready to buy and they've done their evaluation. So the questions that they're asking, we need to be curious about them, and they're very telling where they are in their buyer journey. And so, but like more activity does not equal more engagement. More activity. And why? And how do I know that? I know that because we have a lot of sites that we've seen where reps, AEs, CSMs are sharing case studies, product PDFs, generic decks, and they just throw them up on sites, and they're just like people did in email, spraying and praying, same things happening. with digital sales rooms. They're not visiting a site to look at material that they can find on a marketing website. So you got to be really aware of the content that is being shared. Buyers are engaging with a site and with content, specifically content that is very decision support focused, very aligned with consensus building, right? So think about it. A digital sales room that has a mutual action plan, a digital sales room that has content that is tied to the decision process and decision criteria will have a dramatic lift in engagement. And then that engagement is going to pull the champion in along with all the buying team stakeholders, and then they're going to engage in your site. And now where are they spending their most time? Like that stat is crazy. 20x more with ROI calculators, business case information, and pricing models. Just internalize that for a second. 20x more. Like it's crazy. It's crazy. It surprised me. And this is operational for us, right? We can take this information, we collectively, the industry, all of you, whether you're a SalesHood customer or not, and you can immediately transform the tools and the assets that you're sharing, tools and assets that you're currently sharing with prospects. You know, they've already visited your website. I'm going to say it again. You know, they've watched your case studies, they've watched your demo videos on YouTube, they've read all your product pages, they've read all your G2 reviews. They got you. You know, they filled out a demo request because you're above the line in terms of their evaluation criteria, and now they want to talk and they want to understand. Are you going to be able to, is there a business case here? Can you help me build a consensus? Is the pricing going to work? What does implementation is another one. Implementation is slightly below ROI and pricing model, but I wanted to highlight to you what high engagement content looks like in a B2B selling motion. And it's all about helping our decision makers, helping our champions evaluate risk, justify decisions, and align stakeholders. Amazing. This is incredible data. I appreciate the comment in the chat. This slide tells an important story. Spray and pray is exactly the right way to describe this. Yeah, the data, it was incredible when we analyzed it, summarized it, and then realized. Personally, I always thought folks want to hear customer stories. You know, load up the site with a bunch of video testimonials from. It's not true, folks. Folks didn't want to see it. Here's another piece of content. I love this one. I'm a big believer in personalized, highly curated videos. 3x more buyer engagement. When a seller, when a seller or CSM, we have both using the digital sales room client. We call them client sites because it extends beyond just the new business. It also goes into renewal, add-on. And so sellers who recorded a personal video generated nearly 3x the platform average of engagement. Simple 2-minute video. Why? We're in an era where our buyers, they want the personalization. They want the human experience. We're going to talk about an expert, an AI buying expert that we're rolling out inside of the digital sales room to help the buyers move along to build the consensus that they need to get their questions answered. We're going to talk about that. But the importance of that personal video is critical, and I love seeing this data. That personalized video drives 3x buyer engagement. Really, really great. So what have we talked about so far? We talked about engagement is the new pipeline gauge. We've talked about multi-threading, 7+ contacts aligned with Gartner's data. We talked about mutual action plans, 2xing engagement, driving better alignment, increasing the deal size. And then we looked at content, the content that doesn't work and the content that does work, pricing content, the business case content, the value-based content, the implementation content, back of the funnel content. Makes total sense. Makes total sense now that we are seeing it. And then this idea of personalized videos. What leaders should operationalize and check it out with marketing, right? The best revenue teams are already operationalizing buyer engagement behavior into their training, into their onboarding, into their forecasting, into their manager cadences, into their pipeline reviews, into their account reviews, right? So we see it, we saw it with some smart recruiters, KPA, Federado. It's part of their business, it's part of their sales culture. And so, but as I shared these insights with you, the first thing you got to do is you need to develop digital sales room templates that are mapped to the stages in your sales process. You got to be really prescriptive. I think the problem is if you're not organized and prescriptive for your sales and success teams, what ends up happening is they're going to make it up. And so now that you know the type of content that drives engagement, the type of content that buyers are most interested in seeing, now that you understand how effective mutual action plans can be in driving up engagement and personalized video, let's give our teams very curated, highly curated content by stage, 3 to 4 pieces by stage, right? So if someone is in stage 4 and that's where you are doing business case and you're doing value based, wherever the stage is, right? So have the documentation, have the materials available in a digital sales room template. So I think number one, and that's something that enablement needs to be doing with RevOps, with sales leadership, with marketing because you want the assets to look great. And so that's a team effort, right? But it takes vision and it takes someone to stand up and say, we're going to transform how we're selling. We're going to leverage digital sales rooms every step of the motion here, every step of the buying journey. But in order for us to do this effectively, because we've seen it, companies that are well-intentioned that don't provide their sellers with the content, they're left just building, and then you're losing the power of repeatability. You're losing the power. Okay, that's number one. Number two, multi-threading. You got to make it the standard. It can't just like as Dave said in the chat earlier. How is it possible that we're still single threading on deals? We are still single threaded single deals. We're still single threading, and we're still asking ourselves what the compelling events are. Right? These are some fundamental B2B, and we've got compelling events in the mutual plan because it's that important. We want to be able to co-create the compelling event in the mutual plan sequence of events. And so, we're helping the reps do that with the mutual planning process inside of the digital sales room. So you want to have multi-threading standards and coaching. CROs need to be asking the questions. Regional leaders need to be asking the questions. Frontline managers need to be asking the questions. Reps need to be ready to answer the questions. It needs to be operationalized inside of your system, your Salesforce, whatever, Microsoft, whatever you're using. You got to do mutual action plan training. You can't just hand over a template and expect everyone. When do you introduce it, right? Notice when I talked about introducing the map, the mutual action plan, I talked about it. I introduced the digital sales room and the mutual action plan in the first call. It's a qualifier. You got someone on the phone, you're talking to them about, their challenges, and they're telling you, they start sharing with you kind of their decision process, their decision criteria. Hey, let's map it out together. Now, whoa, we're not ready. Okay, that tells you something, or maybe they're not ready, maybe they're not the right person, maybe they're just using you to price shop. But you can use the mutual action plan, you can use the business case, you can use these assets and the collaboration with them in a digital sales room as a qualifier. And so, yes, you got to train, you got to create the framework, you got to take what's great and what's worked for you, and you got to create those templates for mutual. So those sequence of events that have consistently closed, what those best reps are doing that is in their heads. You got to write it down and then you can templatize it in a mutual action plan template. So critical. Business case and ROI tools. It is it comes in a bunch of different flavors. There's tools out there. You could use a Google sheet. You can build your own app, whatever it is. But you have examples, right? You can have frameworks, but this is so critical. It's number one. Business case and ROI tools are the most engaged content by 20x. It's crazy. And then the other thing you want to operationalize is buyer engagement metrics and pipeline reviews. So what are those metrics that are critical to your business? Roll up a pipeline, excuse me, roll up a buyer engagement score. When I look at my Salesforce opportunity now, I can see the buyer engagement score, which is a roll up of all the activities at the digital sales room. I know. I don't have to look. I don't have to dig in. I'm like, okay, this is a site where the champion and the team is engaged or not engaged, right? So it's pretty clear. Contacts is a roll up, right? And it all rolls up to the forecast. You want to roll up the mutual plan progression, right? So what's important to your business, and you want to be able to solidify the buyer engagement metrics and make sure they show up where your leaders show up and where they're running their businesses. And then finally, this is important to call out. I think, enablers, RevOps leaders, we believe that digital sales rooms and the engagement data is critical. But if we don't win over the hearts and minds of the frontline managers, then it's all going to just kind of not be used, not be integrated. So pull them in early, get them to share with you what content is working inside of their deals, and and then what we highly encourage is teach the managers how to incorporate the digital sales room exploration and curiosity and questions. Teach them how to do it inside of a deal review. You also got to teach your salespeople. I'm going to talk about that in a minute on how to leverage the data. But these are some of the ways that we recommend operationalizing buyer engagement data in partnership with marketing. So that way you're not just looking at sales activities anymore, you're looking at buyer activities. Just think about that for a second. And that was a big theme in the Gartner conference. I think sales activities are great, and especially in an agentic world, when you're going to, agentify the sales process, we're going to want to pull in the buyer engagement data because that's a source of truth for us, and that's where the rubber meets the road. Are they engaging with our content? How are they thinking and feeling about our solution? How are they thinking about next steps? And the reps and the salespeople that are able to really lean into it, lean into the conversation with their champion, teach their champion the importance of roping in the entire buying committee, collaborating in a mutual plan, co-creating a business case, value-based selling, doing that together. That's the difference between a champion and then someone who's just using you to price shop. It's really important that we also focus and we operationalize kind of skills training. And I did some time thinking hard about, okay, what does skills training look like this year? As we really lean into buyer engagement, as we want to identify our sales process, as we want to really leverage the buyer engagement data to improve forecast accuracy. It only works if we can get our sellers to be great at consensus building, if we can get our sellers to be great at business value and decision support, and if we can get them to really truly comprehend how to leverage and how to execute digital buyer engagement in a sales motion. And so listen, AI role playing is great for this because you can set up all these different scenarios. You can set up simulated conversations with champions. You can set up simulated conversations, coaching conversations with your managers. And so, you really want to teach your sellers how to engage multiple stakeholders, how to drive alignment, and how to manage buying committees. And this could be one-on-one with a champion. This could be how to run a call, but this is very specific now. We're moving beyond just like pitch training and discovery training. This is advanced. It shouldn't be advanced. It should be standard, but it's advanced. And I highly recommend you thinking about, what does consensus building look like and mean in your go-to-market, in your industry, with your buyers, and then building some training, and our AI role play is perfect. It'll let you guys do this at scale. The business value and decision support. There's a whole bunch of ways to arm your teams with business value and decision support. So you want to help your sellers uh, be the true consultative, trusted salesperson that you want them to be, to guide ROI discussions, be able to develop a business case, talk about implementation planning, talk about risk reduction. Listen, this is important today more than ever. Many organizations are facing with the buy versus build decision. Like, think about it. How many of you are in a situation now where your CIO or the CIO you're selling to thinks that they can build your app with Claude, with whatever AI is in there, is within their toolkit? Many do, right? But you've got to build a business case with your champion. You got to really understand the implementation considerations, the risks. You got to understand timeline. You got to understand kind of the cost of this thing, right? Like, sure, you'll build it once. Like, yeah, people can maybe build an AI role play agent. Go do it. But then what happens when this industry evolves? And what happens when you want to integrate it with an overall coaching system, right? So there's a lot to think about. I'm using my example just because it's real for us. But you know. And then you want to train your sellers to create personalized stage-based buying experiences using content, mutual plans, personal videos. We have a whole training program based around digital buyer engagement. We've got a number of training partners we work with that can help with consensus building and business value and decision support. So if that's something you want to lean into, you got to let us know. I think the question that we're asking ourselves is different. We've been asking ourselves, how do we drive more sales activity? How do we improve the efficiency of our salespeople? Okay, I get it. what high performing revenue organizations that are truly embracing digital buyer engagement in their go to market and integrating it with their workflow, with their forecasting, with their pipeline reviews, and they're winning more deals. They're asking, how do we make the buying experience so effective that deals move faster? Right? Out professionalizing the competition, streamlining the sales process, using an agentic layer on top of it to recommend content, answer questions to the buyers. This is where we are now in the world. And and the future of sales, and I know this now more than ever because of the data, my time at Gartner that I just spent, and just years and years of doing this. We're at the moment, we've been talking about it for years, but this is it. We are a buyer-centric B2B sales world right now, and it is less about being seller-centric. And I think we need to reframe our enablement programs to be grounded in these new questions. And so, as a recap, I thought I'd share, some of these signals behind winning deals, right? I've talked through them, right? So modern B2B deal health signals, right? So number one, engagement is a pipeline health signal. 16 repeat buyer visits. That's the standard, right? So when you're looking at your deals, you're asking yourself, okay, we've got a digital sales room. How many repeat buyer visits do we have? Three? They're not really engaged with our content. Now, it could be a false positive. I get it, false negative, and all that good stuff. But like consistently, we see 16 repeat buyer visits on average for bigger deals and deals that close, right? Multi-threading has 7x higher engagement. Think about that for a minute. That means I've got 7x more engagement. More people who are making decisions, are looking at my content, are reviewing my content. And that means that we're getting more people aligned with our solution, our point of view. That's alignment, right? And so you got to have at least seven. And Gartner says 6 to 10. We're saying seven. We're in the zone, right? 2x higher engagement with mutual action plans. We've been talking about mutual action plans for decades. Now it's dynamic, it's collaborative, it's interactive, integrated with the digital sales room so you can now operationalize it at scale faster, better than ever before. This is the one, the content, decision support content. Think about it. Stage three, stage four, stage five content, not the stage one, stage two content, not the marketing website content. ROI, business case, pricing, implementation, competitive comparisons is another one that showed up on the list. Not as high up, but it's still, kind of was number 5 or 6. That's the content that moves the needle. 20x more engagement. That should be a takeaway, right? Like rethink your library, rethink your content, rethink what content you're making available to your teams at what point, and making sure that they understand how to leverage this content and when to introduce it. And then finally, personalization. Yes, I know we've talked about personal videos and look at me, all that good stuff. It works. It works. And that requires, kind of someone to record a very professional, very relevant, very, very personalized video that does a professional recap of the business problems and guides the buying team to next steps. That kind of content, that kind of video drives up engagement by 3x. AI guided buyer engagement. So all of this data, all of this great information is now feeding kind of our system of engagement, B2B system, and we are rolling out. Digital sales rooms have been around for 3, 4 years for us, but the AI guided buyer engagement is going to help buyers navigate decisions, align stakeholders, and keep deals moving forward. Right? That's what we're talking about. That's what we're talking about. This is coming out in this quarter. This quarter. I'm not going to commit the exact month, but this quarter is not far away because we're halfway through Q2. And so buyers are increasingly expecting this kind of AI guided, self-guided experience. And so when your CRO or your CEO or whoever says to you, we got to agentify our sales process. We need to make sure that every stage in our sales process has an agentic AI. The digital sales room does it. And now with the AI guided buyer engagement, your buyers are going to have an expert agent that's going to answer their questions about implementation, answer their questions about, and those questions, they're tough questions, right? So if you put the right content in there, they can ask the questions, then guess what? They're going to be able to move faster because I want consistency. I want momentum. And so the AI guided buyer engagement becomes the ultimate expert and is going to take all this great information. It's going to take all this, right? It's going to take the engagement, knowledge, the multi-threading knowledge. It's going to provide suggestions to the champion. It's going to make sure that the mutual plan is being, moving along the right way. It'll post questions. It'll answer questions. It'll, highlight the right content. It'll have access to the content. And then ultimately it'll also drive increased personalization. So really excited about the AI guided buyer engagement. And I'm just going to close with this. We welcome anyone who is interested in learning more about SalesHood's digital sales rooms and our agentic AI revenue enablement platform. Boom, please raise your hand. Let us know. We'd love to walk you through it, give you a demo, walk you through, show you what modern revenue teams and how modern revenue teams are operationalizing buyer engagement. Really excited about this. As I said at the beginning, the data. You're going to get a summary of the research data, which will be public. The complete research report is going to be finalized by the end of this week, early next week. That'll be available to you. The replay will be available as well. And again, I'm just so excited about the implications of this data and what this means to organizations as they're reimagining, rethinking about the winning signals, the buying signals, the winning signals in B2B sales today, and especially today in an agentic AI world. Thanks everyone for joining us.